good morning class, and welcome to Sire Summaries 101. I'm Dr. Jimmy, and first of all, we're going to talk about sire summaries. Now, sire summaries are a useful prediction of what a sire can produce, or even going into that further, what a sire's offspring can produce. When we look, first of all, we're going to start off with a little bit of a clicker question, so get out your clickers. Have you read the chapter, and do you understand the information? A, yes. B, no. C, what are we talking about? All right, put those up. And the answer is C, just what I expected. So, moving on. Besides racehorses, sire summaries are a fairly recent invention. You know, they started in Europe with the European dairy industry in the early 1900s, and then came to the U.S. with the United States dairy industry in the 1930s. It was based on a method called central testing, where you bring in a bunch of sires from different areas into one central location so that environment does not affect the outcome of the phenotypes. But central testing could be biased, and so we used a method called BLUP, or B-L-U-P, to change this. Now, as we can see here, BLUP stands for Best Linear Unbiased Prediction, and it's kind of the forefather to EPDs and PTAs. It uses a bunch of complex math equations, and they needed computers to do this really well, so that BLUP didn't really begin until the 1970s and 80s, when computers started becoming a bigger part of our daily lives. And it accounts for the whole herd instead of just a single animal. And similar to a selection index, which we've learned about previously. And it takes into account everything, including genetics, environment, and our phenotype. So the question is, what do sire summaries do for us? They can, one, increase our pool of available sires and allow for greater selection intensity. And two, they use large amounts of data for genetic predictions to increase the accuracy. So we can compare these two animals, the boar on the left and the boar on the right, and obviously they have different phenotypes, but we don't know what their offspring are going to produce unless we have EPDs or sire summaries for these animals. So what's the difference between an EPD and a PTA? Carmela.
Well, the way I understand it is EPD and PTA are basically the same thing. It just depends on what type of animal you're talking about. So for example, EPDs, or estimated progeny differences, are more common in beef, whereas PTAs, which are predicted transmitting abilities, are more common in dairy. And basically they're both trying to predict what half of the breeding value for an animal would be, and they do that by looking at performance data from the animal, from its relatives, and from its offspring, and they kind of come up with a number that they can use to compare each animal, all the animals, to each other. So for example, if a bull had a yearling weight EPD of 80 pounds and another bull had a yearling weight EPD of 60 pounds, we would expect the offspring from the first bull to have a 20-pound higher yearling weight in its offspring compared to the second bull. Or like using PTAs and Holsteins, if we have one bull that has a PTA for milk of 2,500 pounds and another bull that has a PTA of milk for 1,000 pounds, the offspring of the first bull would be expected to produce 1,500 more pounds of milk per lactation than the other bull's offspring.
All right, good job, Carmela. So the question is, how are EPDs calculated? Franny.
EPDs are calculated using complex statistical equations and models. They are a combination of the performance data for a sire, information from its ancestors, its relatives, and its progeny. And then the performance data is things that can be measured physically, like the weight at birth of the progeny, their yearling weight, and things like that. They are adjusted based on the age and the sex of the animal, The genetic merit of the mate that is going to be used is also taken into accountability. And the statistical analysis also accounts for the effects of the environment. So things like nutrition, climate, geographical location that exist between the herds. These can be estimated because of the use of artificial insemination. The genetic relationships between the traits are also considered, whether or not a trait is correlated to one another. They're most useful to compare individuals for a specific trait. And then birth weight EPDs in the beef industry are the most accurate indicators of genetic differences between the birth weight for individuals.
All right, good job, Franny. Looks like you know a lot about EPDs. So important. Why do breeders use sire summaries?
Proven data is used when we use sire summaries. We can know the differences in breeding values and use those for our own breeding objectives. Buying semen from a catalog or online database gives the breeder more freedom to see what kind of bulls they want. A bull could even be dead, and we could use their sire summaries to see what their data looks like to use them in our herd. We don't want to use a bull in our herd that we don't know anything about. If we bring his semen in, he could produce results that we don't want to see. So it's good to have that data to know what he'll produce and what his offspring will be like. Sire summaries in dairy cattle, called PTAs, are now being determined by genotyping the bulls. The GEPTA data includes the individual bull's genotypic information as well as his pedigree, and we can know his performance as well as his relatives' information. GEPTAs increase the accuracy and intensity of selection for bulls. A breeder must look at a sire summary for the specific breed they're looking at. There can be differences with different breeds. It's important to know which breed you're working with and which sire you want to use. The sire summary can make the pool for available sires larger because you know the data of different bulls, so you can choose the one you want that's exactly for your herd. Breeders have thousands of options. There's bulls all over the country. There's accuracy in selection, which is important to, for your herd to know what you're going to do. You can use a bull from Alaska to Alabama to Florida to Utah, California, wherever you want to get your bull from, you can do that, and you can look at his sire summary. The selection risk is lower because you know what he's going to produce. And lastly, it can be a marketing tool. Breeders can put out their data for their bull, and you can look at it, and the public can see what their bull produces, and they can get more information and order from that breeder.
Good job, Ashley. So, as you can see up here on the screen, we have a sire summary up here of a Holstein bull named Planet. Would anybody like to come up and explain to us some of the information that we have on our Holstein bull here? Cody? Oh, thanks for volunteering. Come on up here.
Times like these where I wish I paid more attention in class. All right, so as our lovely professor has told us, this bull is Planet, and he is currently on the top of the list for Select Sires, which is a AI company, semen company. He's on the top of the list for Holstein dairy bulls. So, included in this sire summary, we have pictures of some of his daughters, and they are very beautiful, as you can see. And then we have our information right here. This summary does not include the linear traits, which are used quite a bit for show cows. They're also used in other things. It kind of just depends on your breeding objectives, like we've learned so often in class. But up here you can see, first of all, we have milk. These are all the PTAs, and as it says here, USDA genomic evaluation. So this bull was tested with genomics, and the base year right now is 2005. So for those of you who don't understand what base year is the year they take all of the daughters born in that year, and they average out their milk. And so these are based off the base year. The base year changes every 5 years in the United States. So the next change will be in 2015, and they will do the base year is 2010. So these are all based off of 2005 numbers. Milk, we have a plus 2,368 pounds, and that's for a 305-day lactation. So this bull's daughters, on average, will produce that much more milk than the average daughter born in the year 2005. Protein, we have plus 68. We also have a percent protein. We have fat. Then we can see the net merits here, and the fluid merit and the cheese merit like we talked in class. So overall the net merit is plus $726 a year, and then the fluid merit is plus 741, and the cheese merit is plus 724. You might be seeing a lot of these percent reliabilities. Basically, that's just saying how reliable this information is. We can see from here that there are 26,094 daughters from this bull that they have looked at, and so the percent reliability is 99%. So that's basically what I know, unless you have something else to add, Professor.
That's very good, Cody. Thank you very much. Lastly, we're going to talk about some caveats that there always are with sire summaries. The first is that sire summaries are only a prediction and an average of the overall daughters. So you can get, as in averages, you can get highs and lows on the bell curve that we see so often. Also, phenotype is important along with genotypic selection. So even if an animal has the best sire summary, maybe they will produce a post-legged animal that can never walk or something, and so you need to be able to take into account both phenotype and genotype if possible. And lastly, only half the genetic information comes from a sire. So you can't make the best sire with the worst cows and expect to get the best offspring. It's an additive effect, and therefore just keep that in mind. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for showing up to class, and we will reconvene on Tuesday after Thanksgiving.